Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, thanks for the opportunity that have given to me. And I say thank you for my lecturer, Mr. Adi Isma, who has been teaching me about the important things all this year. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is Aldi Prabowo. I am from Class C English Language Education 2018. I am here. I will explain about the material of ESP, or as we know as English Specifics of Purpose. Okay, now let's begin with the chapter 1, the origin of ESP. We will now discuss in a little more detail the struggle for existence. What is ESP? ESP is an approach to language teaching in which all decisions as to content and methods are based on the learner's reason for learning. According to Charles Darwin, the origin of species as with most developments in human activity. ESP was not a planned and coherent movement, but rather a phenomenon that grew out of a number of converging trends. These trends have operated in a variety of ways around the world, but we can identify three main reasons common to the emergence of all ESP. The first is the demand of a brave new world. The end of the Second World War in 1945 heralded an age of enormous and unprecedented expansion in scientific, technical, and economic activity on an international scale. This expansion created a world united and dominated by two forces, technology and commerce, which in their relentless progress soon generated a demand for international language. For various reasons, most notably the economic power of the United States in the post-World War, this role fell to English. And the second is a revolution in linguistics. If language varies from one situation of use to another, it should be possible to determine the features of specific situations, and then make these features the basis of the learner's course. At the same time as the use of English, which was growing up for specific needs, it also influenced the study of language itself. In the past, the purpose of linguistics was only for the usage of the language, which is well known as grammar. However, as the time goes by, the early studies began to find out that the usage of language grammatically is actually different from the real-life usage. One of the examples is the way we speak and write the language. And the third is focus on the learners. The development of course in which relevance to the learner's interest was paramount. The development in educational psychology contributed to the rise of ESP by emphasizing the central importance of the learners and their attitude to learning. Learners were seen to have different needs to interests, on their motivation to learn, and therefore on the effectiveness of their learning. And now we move to the chapter 2, is the development of ESP. The development of ESP talks about the register of analysis, aims to identify lexical and grammatical features of registers. The teaching material focused on the linguistic features which represented the syllabus. In linguistics, a register is a variety of language used for a particular purpose or in a particular social setting. Register analysis is an analysis of grammatical and lexical features on the language used for a particular purpose or in particular social setting. And the second is rhetorical and discourse analysis. In this page, the second phase of development shifts attention to the level above the sentence, and ESP became closely involved with the emerging field of discourse or rhetorical analysis. It focused to understand how sentences were combined in discourse to produce meaning. And the third is target situation analysis. The target situation analysis is also known as the learner-centered approach, according to Hutchinson and Weathers. Target situation analysis was aimed to take students' existing knowledge and setting in on a more scientific basis by establishing procedures for relating language analysis more closely to learners' reason for learning. And now we move to the language description. The language descriptions has 3 points too. Like first is classical or traditional grammar. Not all the developments in linguistics have the pedagogic application. These descriptions were based on analysis of the role played by each word in the sentence. Language were described in this way because the classical language were case-based language where the grammatical function of each word in the sentence was made apparent by the use of appropriate inflection. Second is structural linguistics. The structural or slot and filler form language description will be familiar to most language teachers as a result of the enormous influence it has on teaching since the Second World War. In a structural description, the grammar of the language is described in terms of syntagmatic structures, which carry the fundamental proposition or statement integrative, negative, imperative, and notation like time, number, and gender. And the third is transformational generative grammar. For ESP, the most important lessons to be drawn for Chomsky's work was the distinction is made between performance and competence. Chomsky's own definition of performance and competence was narrowly based, being concerned only with syntax. A simple way of seeing the distinction between performance and competence is in our capacity to understand the meanings of words we have never met before. Then next is we talk about theory of learning. Theory of learning have 3 points too, like the behaviorism. This is the first theory of learning by Pavlov in Soviet Union and Skinner in the United States. In this theory said that learning is the connection process of habit formation and given value by quality of the frequent action of continuous stimulus response. This theory has the largest impact in the learning psychology and in language teaching. This theory provides the theoretical to support the use to audio language method of the 1950 and 1960. Then the second is mentalism. From the audio language method, there was considerable empirical evidence among language teachers because the method was not delivering the good result. The reason why they are that because in the language learning process, the learners still translating things as for rules of grammar, fun reporting things, and sometimes fail to learn something, even drop the already learned the thing so many times. And the third is cognitive coding. In the first theory, the learners pretend to be a passive receiver of information, but in cognitive theory, the learners are being the active processor of information, the learning process, and using a rule make the learners to think and use the mental power to understand the rule from the mass data and find the appropriate time or situation to use the application of rule. And now we move to the next material is needs analysis. Need analysis have 3 points like target. Like the first is target need analysis. Target need analysis is something of a number term which is practiced has a number of important distinctions. In other words, target need is what the learner needs to do in the target situation and have 3 points like necessities, likes, and wants. Necessities are about what the learner has to know in order to function effectively in the target situation. In other words, necessity also means the need of someone to be success in his or her business. Moreover, once in the skills which a student sees as being relevant to himself or herself. And the second is luck. Luck is the difference between the student's present competence and the desired competence. Moreover, based on English for specific purpose, a book like is about what the learner knows already, so that the teacher or the facilitator can decide which of the necessities the learner lacks. The last is wants. According to Ulrich, 1982, in those needs on which students put a higher priority in the available limited time. Moreover, according to Huntsman and Waters, 1987, definition of wants is perceived of subjective needs of learners. Wants also means that the students need to know what they want to be learner. And second point is gathering information about target needs. The analysis of target situation needs is in a sense of matter of asking questions about the target situation and the attitude towards that situation of the various participants in the learning process. There are some ways in which information can gather about needs. The most frequently used like questionnaires, interviews, observation, data collection, and ongoing or regular class discussion. And the last is learning needs analysis. Learning needs analysis what the student needs to do in order to learn, using our analogy of the ESP course as a journey. What we have done so far and consider the starting point lack and the destination necessities and where the destination should be once. Moreover, the whole ESP process is concerned not with knowing or doing but with learning. And the last material about ESP is approach to course design. Course design is the process by which the raw data about a learning need is interpreted in order to produce an integrated series of teaching learning experience, whose ultimate aim is to lead the learners to a particular state of knowledge. And the first point is language-centered course design. This is the simplest kind of course design process and is probably the one most familiar to English teachers. This aims to draw as direct connections as possible between the analysis of the target situation and the content of ESP course. And the second is skill-centered course design. It has been applied in a number of countries, particularly in Latin America. Students in universities and college there have the limited but important need to read subject text in English because they are unavailable in the mother tongue. In response to this need, a number of ESP projects have been set up with specific aim to developing the students' ability to read in English. And the third is a learning-centered approach. This approach is based on the principle that learning is totally determined by the learner. As teachers, we can influence what we teach, but what learn is determined by the learner alone. Learning is seen as a process in which the learners use what knowledge or skills they have in order to make sense or the flow of new information. Learning, therefore, is an international process which is crucially dependent upon the knowledge the learners already have and their ability and motivation to use it. Learning is not just a mental process. It is a process of negotiations between individuals and society. So I think that's all about material of ESP that I can explain. So I say thank you and see you.